Hello, welcome to Launching Your Learning on Monday, April 20th. So we are getting ready to start our last skill in our multiplying with fractions, and that is, it's the thing we've been working for, multiplying mixed numbers. So this anchor chart is the first page in your work today, and it's going to kind of show you some different ways that you can solve this. So let's go ahead and launch our learning and do number 1 together. I went ahead and kind of set this up for you to show you how we use the array, just like we use an array when we break our numbers apart with multiplication of whole numbers. So my first mixed number is 3.5. And so I take that number and I break apart the whole number and the fraction. So I put my 3 here and my half here. And then I also put my 3 down here and my half there. Then I take my second number. So if my 3 went across the top, my 3.5, then my 2.5 is going to go down the side. So here's my 2.5 and my 2.5. And now you just multiply these like you would when you're multiplying whole numbers, okay? So I look, what is 2 times 3? Well, 2 times 3 is 6, okay? And this box usually students feel pretty comfortable with, that feels pretty easy peasy. So now, remember I said I like to always put the whole numbers first because it's easy for me to think 2 times a half. I have 2 groups of a half. So 2 groups of a half would equal 1. All right. What about 3 groups of a half? Well, if 2 groups of a half equal 1, then 3 groups of a half are going to equal 1 and 1/2. Okay? Let me stretch this out so you can see everything. Perfect. And then for this last box here, we're definitely going to want you to use the rule that we learned about multiplication and not really try to do an array. This already has a lot of steps as it is, and we don't need to add an array to that. So 1/2 plus 1 or times 1/2, 1 times 1 is 1, and 2 times 2 is 4. So let's stop there. If what I'm saying is not making any sense at all, I would pause this video and go back to the very beginning. Because we have to, 1, know how to set up our array, and 2, we have to know how to get all the numbers inside. If you're feeling good with everything that I've done so far, we're going to go ahead and move on to our second step. So the second step is, well, we know with arrays, once I have all of these numbers, what do I got to do? I got to add them together. So I need to add 6 plus 1 plus 1.5 plus 1/4. Okay, so 6 plus 1 plus, let me make this a little bit more beautiful to see. All right, I'm going to put you back, put these numbers back. There. So 6 plus 1. And this is where, too, a lot of my 5th graders like to try to do some shortcuts because they start to try to add stuff in their head. And I'm like, don't you do that now, because you're gonna get something confused and a piece missing. All right, perfect. Now, I'm not saying we can't start putting some stuff together. So let's look here. I've got 6 plus 1. That's 7. Plus another 1 is 8. Okay? So see how I took, I love my little highlighter here. Let me highlight this. I took this 6, 1, and 1, put them together, and I made 8. But look, that means that I'm left with a half and a fourth that I still have to add to this. Okay? So that would be 8 plus 1 half plus 1 fourth. Well, I'm adding fractions. So let's kind of go back in our brains and remember about adding fractions. When we add fractions, our denominators have to be the same. So when I'm looking at these denominators, I got a half and I've got a fourth. So my denominators are not the same, but I do know that I can multiply my 2 times something to turn it into a 4. So 8 plus 2 fourths plus 1 fourth. And then when I look at that, well, I can say, well, add my fourths together. And so my final answer would be 8 and 3 fourths. So my final answer is 8 and 3 fourths. So once again, if that feels really confusing to you, I would stop and go back and rewatch that. So number 1, we take our problem, we set it up in the array. Number 2, we multiply the numbers in the array. Step 3, we make sure that we pull out all 4 numbers. If I have 4 numbers here, I need to have 4 numbers here. I start to add that together, and then remembering that if I am adding have unlike denominators or uncommon denominators, then I have to change those so my denominator is the same. Okay, so let's keep this in our head. 3.5 times 2.5. This strategy is the array strategy. There's one more strategy. Let's go back here. It says you can do this or you can do that. I really like the array strategy. I feel like it keeps things nice and organized, but you also have the improper fraction strategy. So that equation was 3.5 times 2.5. If I changed 3.5 to an improper fraction, then I would do 3 times 2 is 6 plus 1 is 7. So this would turn to 7 halves times 2 times 2 is 4 plus 1 is 5 halves. And then remember, when we multiply with fractions, we do the numerator. I always forget to change it to my highlighter. We do the numerator times our numerator. 7 times 5, that's 35. And then we do our, did it again. We do our denominator times our denominator. Move that back over. Our denominator times our denominator. So 2 times 2 is 4. Okay? And so then I have to say, this is where sometimes I feel like improper fraction is hard, because if you don't know how to change this back to a whole number, then you're kind of stuck. But let's see, I know that, let's see, 4 times 8 is, let's see, 34. 4 times 9 is 36. So 4 times 8 is 32. And so if 4 times 8 is 32, then 8 wholes would get rid of 32 of my fourths. And then I'd have 8 and 3/4 left over. So let's go back here. 8 and 3/4. So either way, oops, and 3/4. There. Either way you do it, the answer is 8 and 3/4. Some of you really love improper fractions. You know how to change it from a mixed number to an improper fraction really easily. If that is you, then this might be a great strategy for you. I've noticed that a lot of times students will get 35/4 and not really know what to do with it. And we do want you to be able to change it back to a mixed number. So that's where this strategy might work a little bit better for you, breaking it apart. Okay, so today when you're working, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 more problems to do. So do those 4 problems, try both strategies, or maybe just try to really focus in on one, whatever you'd like to do. And this is just day 1. Remember, I will post a video showing you how I solved the other 4 problems, and you can check that when you're done. Thanks so much.